Hi, everyone. Thank you for all. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, all right. Hey, all right. I know it's like we were waiting sort of quietly to get started, but thank you all for coming. My name is Luke Johnson. Welcome to the 2022 IxD Grad Show Live. As I said, my name is Luke Johnson, and the projects you'll see today are part of the Senior Studio class. But before we get started, I wanted to welcome IxD Program Lead Nicole Chan, who will talk about the IxD program, and welcome our awesome guests.
Yeah, hi everybody. As Luke said, I'm Nicole Chan. I'm the IxD program lead. The SMC IxD program is very unique. It's the only interaction design bachelor's program at a community college in the United States. And for those watching on YouTube, the IXD program began its first cohort of students in the fall of 2016 as one of 15 pilot bachelor's degree programs in the state of California. And this past fall, the SMC IxD program was made officially permanent by the state of California. Hooray! And we are excited to graduate this sixth cohort on this coming Saturday. And I'd like to introduce our special guests for today. These are the industry experts who will be providing feedback. So I'm just gonna ask you guys to give a brief intro to yourself. So Tina, I don't know if you wanna start, kick us off.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I always love coming to these critiques and advisory boards. I've known Luke for a very long time and was introduced to Nicole through him as well. And my background is that I have a bachelor's and master's in the creative industry, but really my focus has been on research. And so I kind of started in human-centered design very early in the process when it was kind of undefined, and have been working with research methods in healthcare specifically for over 15 years now. I have a studio in New York City called Diagram, and our work is dedicated to really thinking through the lens of the patient, understanding the patient's experience, conducting and using creative methods of research with them, and then pulling those insights and translating them into products and services for various different companies. And so on my free time, I love to teach and advise, and I'm really happy to be here and excited to hear all about the work that you've been doing.
Thanks, Tina. Ashley, do you want to give us a little intro into you?
Hello. I'm Ashley Graydon. It's really interesting to do these things on Zoom because you can have one meeting that's about something completely different and then all of a sudden you're a little bit in shock right now because we're talking about product roadmaps for Bill.com, and then all of a sudden I'm in a graduation ceremony. So the joys of technology. Well, a little about me. I am friends with the Chans. I know Nicole's husband very well. I was one of the first teachers at GA a long time ago. I work in UX, and I have done for quite a long time. My background is in anthropology. My subspecialty was in medical and psychological anthropology. I can say this now because I grew up wanting to be an epidemiologist. Before the pandemic, nobody knew what that meant. And through my studies, I realized I was much more interested in technology than epidemiology. So I moved into tech in the early 2000s. And then my master's is in human factors and systems engineering, kind of hence the research leanings. And I'm now at Bill.com, which is based in Silicon Valley, helping manage research. Oh yeah, undergrad was at UCLA. So, and went to high school in Ventura. So I have a lot of connection with that area. I was born in LA as well. So I'm very happy to see what you all are doing at Santa Monica City College. And it's nice to kind of, even though I'm kind of in the Sacramento and Bay Area now, it's nice to stay connected to kind of my home, and my mom's in Ventura. And so anyway, hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. It's so lovely to see you. All right, Luke, I think I'm kicking it back to you.
Yeah, no, it's great. And Tina and Ash, thank you both for being here. I can imagine you guys would have a great conversation outside of this Zoom room as well. Speaking of which, so this year's senior capstone reflects an 8-week sprint. So, oftentimes senior theses are a whole semester long. We decided to try it as an 8-week sprint model this time. And students were allowed to work individually or as part of a team. And the projects you'll see today are team projects. So because of this, students were allowed to work, individually or in groups. They'll see a variety of different types of projects and presentations. The individual student presentations will be more focused on presenting the design practice, whereas the students and groups will be pitching more of a product. We also tried to group student work around a theme, and the theme for this session, for all those who are listening out there, is around health and healthcare. So students are so as far as how we're going to run this today, students will present their work for about 5 minutes, and then the moderator will ask each guest to take the lead on the feedback for 10 minutes after that. So, Nicole?
Yeah, and so feedback is always can be tricky. And something that we like to do in our program and lots of other places too is a structure called I like, I wish, I wonder. So this is a really lovely method. So usually when you're giving someone feedback, it's nice to start with like, I like, so something that was positive, and then you can move into something I wish. This can be a starting point for something that could have been thought about differently or can be improved. And then I wonder is a really great way to frame any questions or ideas that you can give back to somebody. So I'll go ahead and paste this in the chat as well. But before I do that, we're going to go ahead and start with our first group, which is Vianney, Rachel, and Sebastian. And Ashley, I was wondering if you would take lead on the feedback for this group.
Okay, and then yeah, after Ash gives her feedback, Tina, if you want to weigh in as well. So Rachel, Sebastian, Vianney, for their capstone project, Rachel, Sebastian, Vianney designed for accessibility. During the 7 weeks that they've been working on this project, this group researched, interviewed, synthesized, prototyped the design for the needs of people with dementia and their caregivers. We'll follow the story of Albert and his experience dealing with dementia. Over to you, team.
Thanks, Luke.
This is the story of Albert and his experience dealing with dementia.
I'm just frustrated, I think, is the main word. Because there are things that I know, and I know, but then when it comes to the crunch, I forget them. I remember nothing, or I don't remember much these days. I prefer not to have it. But if I have to live with it, and so long as I've got those people we've been talking about around me, I shall tackle it. No, I can't cure it, but I shall make sure that, I'm not going to give in.
Someone in the world develops dementia every 3 seconds. There are over 55 million people worldwide living with dementia. A person with dementia may gradually lose their independence and become more reliant on the care and support of others around them. Like many of you, we've all grown up with loved ones who've seen their independence diminish because of cognitive or physical decline. Their lack of autonomy made them frustrated and angry with their caregivers. We would like to introduce Memo, a smart TV task reminder system that helps people with dementia maintain independence. Albert has early to mid-stage dementia and is aware of his progression. He takes longer to do everyday tasks and forgets his routines. Therefore, his caregiver Annie needs to constantly remind him about his tasks, making him feel agitated and Annie feel frustrated. Ceci, a caregiver we interviewed, said that her dad doesn't like anyone telling him what he needs to do. He still feels like he's independent. Like Ceci, Annie wants to ensure that Albert is safe, entertained, and monitored so she can have time outside of caregiving. Albert finds comfort in a daily routine. He uses hacks like alarms, post-its, and whiteboards with a schedule to give himself structure and independence. He needs to plan and prepare for later stages, but he's easily sidetracked, making tasks increasingly more challenging to accomplish. We understood that user frustration comes from diminishing independence. Our solution, Memo, relieves some of Annie's strain and gives Albert the tools to continue to be self-reliant. Memo reminds Albert of his tasks without Annie having to prompt him.
Memo reaches Albert on a familiar platform, the television. Many seniors over 65 spend almost a fourth of their time in front of the TV. TV use is common for those with dementia. New systems and directions are challenging to recall. We want to make this accessible to everyone, and those without a smart TV can access Memo using TV-based media players like Roku, Chromecast, and Apple TV. Annie can set reminders on the app, which allows her to set routines and monitor from a distance. Reminders are displayed on the TV screen until they are marked complete or postponed for later. Annie is notified on the Memo smartphone app when an action is taken. Annie wants to encourage independence while still ensuring that Albert is saved and entertained. Memo allows Annie to set activities through the day, such as games, exercises, photographs, and music. These activities offer mental, physical, and social stimulation that slows cognitive deterioration. All reminders, games, and activities are read aloud for accessibility. Albert doesn't always respond well to Annie's instructions. Therefore, caregivers can choose from various voices and languages depending on their loved one's preferences. Memo reminds their loved ones what to do so they don't have to. In the future, we want to use automatic speech recognition and natural language processing so that Albert can respond to reminders without the use of a remote. We learned that when designing for people with dementia, short-term memory is vulnerable. So products need to be introduced gradually instead of at once. Therefore, screens need to be divided to contain one action at a time. Through testing, we confirmed that simple plain backgrounds, large fonts are best for legibility and are less distracting. We also found that people with dementia are more likely to do something when approached with a calm, friendly tone.
We validated our concept by talking to dementia caregivers. This is Lisette, a caregiver that we interviewed. This is what she had to say.
I like it because, I mean, if we get sidetracked doing something else, at least something is there physically telling them, hey, this is going on next, or that's going on next.
A reminder.
So we don't have to be hovering over him, because that's what he gets upset about when we hover, like the reminders of the shower. You need to jump in the shower. I'm going to do it when I want to. So maybe if he sees it here, like, hey, it's time to shower, it would be a whole different concept of having to hear us yelling at him, well, not yelling at him, but telling them consistently, hey, you need to do this, hey, you need to do that. And he's actually going to see it versus just listening to it, because sometimes we'll tell him something, he won't hear us. So seeing the actual visual, it's going to be very helpful.
Hopefully, medical advances in the future can help dementia be a thing of the past. But in the meantime, we hope Memo positively impacts more people like Albert and Annie and inspires accessible design. We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas that we could implement in the future, and please feel free to contact us.
Can we clap? Is it time for clapping?
Yes, time for clapping.
Okay.
and team, yeah, if you don't, perfect, yes.
Yay. That was great. Can I, is it time for me to give the feedback?
Yeah, if you don't mind, go for it.
Okay. No, I thought it was wonderful. And I know that it's, like how many minutes, less than 5 minutes, and it's massive amounts of work that you have to cram into that. I really like that you started with a person's name and a video of a person. So you start initially with making an emotional impact and kind of doing that tripwire in our minds and the way that humans evolved to connect with an individual, with the name, the person, you see their face, you see the relationship with, I think it was a wife, and that they're hugging each other, so we can care about the person. And then you go right into the impact in terms of how it scales. So you can care about an individual, but how important is this problem on a large scale? Well, numbers wise, this impacts a huge amount of the population. So we can care about one person, but is this a problem that technology should solve? Yes, it is. Okay, so you did those two things really well to start out, and I really like that. Then you went into the problem statement, talking about the frustration of and the graphics were wonderful. And this is the first I wish that when you stated what the problem was, you showed the problem with an image, but I wish there were also words to state the problem the first time you said it. Because I wrote down the word frustration, but I wish that whole statement was there because then I would remember it more clearly. And also my daughter is deaf and she's 3, almost 4, and more, it's becoming really clear to me why having things, seeing and hearing things and having things in words and pictures and everything is so important, because even if people aren't deaf, they can also be hard of hearing, or they might not catch it, but they can see the words. And I know so many people talk about don't have words on slides. I'm like, but what about deaf people? My daughter's deaf. So that's my I wish. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a wall of words on this. It's just that one problem statement. And I think that would be, make that next. You did impact, emotional impact with the person, right? Impact with the numbers, impact, and then problem statement, impact with the beautiful visual and the words, impact. And then, but then you brought it up again with, you started using the quotes, and I really like that again. I'm going to go into the I wonder part with the mental, physical, social. And I always wonder about this. I wonder, it's a really good model. I always wonder about this with using technology for encouraging social interaction. I mean, I wonder, does it, will a piece of technology encourage a person with dementia to interact socially with people? And I wonder if that can be designed in, or if, you know, mental tasks, physical tasks, yes, that's going to do it. But maybe the social interaction piece, maybe not. I mean, is remembering to call your doctor social interaction? Does that count as social interaction? I don't know. Have we defined what social interaction is? How much time do I have? I didn't set my timer. I have 10 minutes. I didn't set my timer.
Yeah, you're doing good. We have a little bit more time today, so
okay.
You know, and this is wonderful feedback for the students. So thank you. Keep going.
Am I rambling? When I'm at work, everyone's like, Ashley, that's enough time. We have to move on. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Okay. And then the thing with the seniors, and I'm going to say I like this partially because, so it was when I was through kind of my 20s, I actually did spend a lot of time with my grandmother, my grandma Rhoda, who did have dementia. And she loved her TV. She watched her TV all the time. And she had her remote, and she would press her remote like this, and she would sit in her easy chair, and she was so short that her feet would dangle and they would hit the floor, and it was so cute. And if those reminders came onto her TV, she would listen to it. Oh my God. But if it was on her phone, she'd be like, she wouldn't trust it. As we get older, the phones will get bigger, because I have to get the max size now. So I'm only 41, but I'm like, there's no way that the little phones, no, I need the big phones. The phones will get bigger as we get older, and we trust our phones, right? But even now, like the 65 and older, these coming on the TV reminder thing, yes. What I want to know is, can every senior center have great big touchscreen TVs in every room so they can just go and press the screen? That would be lovely. But probably there aren't a lot of senior centers that can afford that. They're probably the more expensive ones. So I wish that there was, I wish and I wonder about like financial accessibility and how things like this can become available to seniors that don't come from privileged backgrounds and don't have the money for big screen TVs with touch screens. Because my grandma, I mean, I have a rich uncle who bankrolled her. She lived a really long time. She lived past her retirement funds. And my rich uncle bankrolled her and she could not figure out that remote. So she would need a touch screen. So that's my I wish and I wonder. I wish every 65-year-old and older had a rich son that would bankroll them. But short of that, I wonder how we can make things like this available to a wider population. In terms of the design itself, I like the simplicity of it, right? I wonder about prioritization of the tasks and how do we make sure that only the truly important things are the things that end up getting messaged and it doesn't become like an overload and overwhelm for someone who has dementia. And I would say actually the primary user would be a caregiver, not the person with dementia, right? Because they're going to be the ones who set up all the reminders and monitor it. And you're going to find this with a lot of medical, especially when there's someone who's sick, someone who's young, or someone who's old. The primary user is going to actually be the primary caregiver, not the patient. So it would be interesting. I actually wonder what it would look like if you weren't. I like that you're telling Albert's story, and I'm not telling you to change it. I'm just wondering. You don't have to do anything on this feedback, but I just wonder what the story would look like if it actually wasn't Albert's story, but it was actually the caregiver's story. And you started out, I forget what her name was, Lisbeth or Liz, the lady was talking about hovering, like if it was her, right? And you saw her with a frustrated patient with dementia, and she was trying to like, I don't want to hover, I just want you to take a shower, right? And like it was told through her eyes and how everything would look if you pivoted and it was told through her eyes. How much more time do I have?
We're right up against it as
I can be done.
Yeah.
Overall, yeah. I think it was fabulous. I think you guys did a great job. If you incorporate one piece of feedback that I said, it would just be put in that problem statement on that slide, and you don't have to change anything else. It's just different things to think about. But you did great.
Great, thank you, Ashley. We're gonna go to Tina. Tina, you have a couple minutes to add on or to give additional feedback. Students, we're gonna have some time, and our guests, we're gonna have some time after the second group goes, after they get their feedback, to have a larger discussion in case you want to follow up with any specific questions that you have. But Tina, go for it.
Well, Ash covered a lot. I mean, I think that, so I'm going to be stretching. I mean, I have a couple of other things, but yeah, I thought you all did a great job. And, I do think that it is, one of those very kind of easily understood tug at the heartstrings challenges. And it seems like maybe there's some people on the team who also had experiences. So that's always nice to kind of, the narrative was there, which I think was really great. I also really like how simple you kept it, really, not just visually as far as execution of the tool or the product, or I don't know what you all want to call it, memo, but also in that it was, kind of straightforward. What I wish is that it could have even been more specific. I think that, you know, there's a whole lot to cover, as you all probably learned in the research that you did and in talking to people. And I think that there's always a bit of a fear of getting too specific, but if you all had any time to do work within kind of what's existent out there, I think that there are a lot of, you know, kind of things that work with essentially reminders. And the challenge is always kind of what Ash was alluding to, it is that it becomes more burdensome on the caregiver. And so not only do they have to learn this new platform, they have to, you know, do all these things. And so it can become a bit of a challenge for them, and especially those caregivers that are in what's called the sandwich kind of caregiving, where they have children and they're also caregiving for their parents. You know, that it can add a lot of additional work for them. And so I don't know how much you all came into contact with that, but I wish that that had been included, or that it could be thought through. And, you know, I've done a lot of work in Alzheimer's disease, which is, of course, closely related to dementia. And oftentimes dementia is the first initial, you know, experience that people have, and that it can develop into Alzheimer's. And in my experience, what I really kind of was shocked about is the lack of focus on the crux of some of these challenges, which is that the relationship between the patient and the caregiver just monumentally changes without anyone actually acknowledging, you know. And so oftentimes, you know, people who are very independent, who have lived either separate lives or, you know, together but separate, or, you know, it completely changes. And it may happen slowly, or it may happen quickly, or it may happen slowly, but it feels rather quickly. And there's not a lot of focus on that, teaching, you know, people how to be in this new relationship. And so I wonder, you know, back to kind of my point about being very specific, is, you know, is there an opportunity space there to really kind of work together with, you know, I'm not quite sure, but psychologists, or, you know, relational, you know, people who are in, I don't know, marriage counseling. I'm not quite sure who it would be, but to also, or incorporate just learning tips around how to be in this new relationship, so that it's not just, hey, do this, hey, do that, take a shower, do the whatever, those basics that I think are, of course, very important. But also, you know, is there a potential to have something very simple of, this is kind of what the experience might be, and this is what it's like. So that's my only, I wonder, to add. And it might feel a little out there, but I do think that, you know, thinking about at the human kind of base of it, is that, you know, their relationship changes, and no one's really trained them to be in that new relationship. And they're expected to behave and act in this way without really having any kind of substantial support to help them to understand what that new normal is.
Great, thank you both. Like, really good, and congratulations, team. Another round of applause. You know, great work, and really inspiring conversation generated by your work. So thank you so much. We're now going to move on to our second and final group in this space. So Nico, Miguel, and Axel, I'll let you introduce your project. Take it away.
Luke, you want to have Tina take the lead on this feedback?
Yes, that would be great.
Hi, so meet Teresa, a dental assistant at Johnson Dental. She's done everything. She scheduled the appointment. got the confirmation with the dentist, insurance's approval. Finally, the patient arrives and is seated, only for Teresa to realize they've run out of sedative and have to reschedule the appointment. This situation would not happen in a well-run dental practice. Unfortunately, due to a persistent staffing issue, Teresa is spread thin. In a normal practice, orders are placed once or twice a month. At Johnson Dental, orders are placed almost daily as staff only realizes what is missing or has expired as they reach for it. The reason this is happening is because Johnson Dental does not subscribe to the Henry Schein monopoly. During the 80s and 90s, one company swallowed the dental market. Henry Schein created a vertically integrated software and inventory management system that locks dentists into their ecosystem. So if a dental practice refuses to use Henry Schein's Dentrix software, they're left to figure out inventory themselves.
This is where Dental Desk comes in. It helps dental practices maintain their inventories in real time. As items are used, they're scanned out of the inventory, and by allowing persistent reporting, dental assistants know what they have on hand when they need to order, and all while giving dental practices their freedom of choice for their specific suppliers. The three main advantages of vendor variation include better money management by letting dental offices shop around for their best deals, different companies that may offer products designed for specific needs, and dental offices that can determine their level of quality for themselves. We learned that every dental practices have inventory that they have to manage. However, if they decide to stray from the Henry Schein monopoly for materials, they're out of luck. A dental office could run out of necessary supplies and only realize as they're about to perform an important medical procedure. Despite the healthcare setting, dental offices work on profit margins and need to be profitable in order to operate and continue providing valuable healthcare services. Our focus is to empower dental healthcare workers with a new inventory tool.
Where Teresa would have previously used something like an Excel sheet for inventory tracking and ordering, she's now able to use Dental Desk to both receive and check out inventory directly from an office mobile device. Here, Dr. Brooks is tracking some expected medical equipment to make sure it's available for his upcoming dental procedure. He is also able to review an extensive order history to make sure everything was received and replenished. Users can replenish supplies by different search options that are visual and intuitive. Dental Desk also gives real-time information about existing supplies and lets users know when they're running low and might not make that next replenishment cycle. Depending on business needs and settings, administrators with more extensive budgetary knowledge can make final approvals on certain orders in order to reduce unnecessary ordering. Administrators can also pre-select what supplier options there are and what presents for orders and which suppliers should be excluded in ordering process to ensure quality control and fight back against the monopolization of dental supplies. This is Dental Desk, an all-in-one mobile solution that allows dental practices to manage inventory with ease and confidence, with the freedom to select their own supply network. And that concludes our presentation. Thanks everyone for your time. We'll open the floor for your questions and feedback.
All right, thank you, team. Probably a caveat, not a cavity, that Johnson Dental is not associated with this professor in any way possible. Tina, we'll turn it over to you to lead the, at least I hope not.
Good, no affiliations. Okay, wow. So very clear presentation. I like that. It was very straightforward, and you all have done, seems like a very deep dive into the opportunity space, which is great. And so I applaud that effort on your part in such a small amount of time. Does someone on your team have dental experience. It seems so kind of in depth. I'm just wondering because I that part is a little bit out of my element.
Yeah, I can talk on that. My buddy is actually does marketing for a dental supply company, and he was informing how most dental practices, the dentists are older, they don't have a lot of computer knowledge, and so they do a lot of things by paper and like by pen and paper. So it's a really big opportunity to try and modernize the dental office.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I kind of felt like it would have been pretty incredible if you all didn't have an IMSS to do the work that you did. So so that's good. I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, it does, I think that you all have, it seems, again, not really in my space, but it seems by what you've shared, you really have identified opportunity space. And I like how clear you were on being able to say, like, here's this monopoly or this big group that exists, and if you're not in that group, you're kind of not in a good place, and you're kind of having to do all of this work very manually. And so I like the storytelling of that was very clear. And then I think that I'm going to start with all my I likes first. So and then I think that what was really done nicely is kind of walking through the tool dental desk and seeing kind of how that worked, and seeing kind of the detail of that, and understanding that this is the way it would work. And so it was done really quickly and very efficiently. So great job on all of those points. My I wishes, I do wish that there was a little bit more of the kind of storytelling behind it, of just really being able to understand, like, here are the challenges that exist, is like, lots of paper, still, still this opportunity gap, and you did share the story of the person up front, which I think is really helpful. There's this one person that does all these things, but being able to kind of say, like, she is certainly strapped and probably spread too thin, but just the fact that it's one person is also a problem, right? And so just being very clear about what those obstacles are up front would have been really, I think, really nice to have. And I think that it's dependent on who your audience is, but I do wish that for the purposes of this presentation, there might have been less about, because I think the presentation felt very, I think it would have been great for like a VC startup, like, look at all of this stuff. This is how the detail, but I found myself getting a little bit lost in the, like, here's how you replenish, here's how you do all these things, because it wasn't what I was more interested in, like, the evolution of how you got there, like how you arrived at that, and then like what the value is on the back end of that, and what you kind of see as being the future of it. And so I do wish that could have been a little more kind of weighed equally, as opposed to, it felt very heavy on the kind of tech tool side of it. And then not too much, I wonder, although just kind of thinking about unanswered questions is, in these offices, I just coincidentally went to the dentist today. So so it's just funny, because I was thinking about my dentist today, and there's this at least for me, a feeling that the dentist in the office, at least these private practices, is the, like, kind of quarterback, if you will. I'm going to totally maim this metaphor because I don't know anything about football, but is the point person for everything. But that person would be nothing without the support staff that's there. And so just trying to understand, like, is it about distributing the tasks? Because the quarterback's not going to do anything. Again, I think in football, they call the play, but, then they have this nice face, and then that's it, right? They don't get hit or anything like that. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that. So, but you know, this idea of like, is it really about distributing that so that, I'm sorry, I forgot her name in the very beginning, is spread less thin, or is it about efficiency for her? Is it about, you know, this is the kind of tie up at the end that I'm wishing for. Is like, I'm not quite sure what the value is, except for modernize your dental practice and don't go to this Henry Schein place or whatever, right? So that's what I was kind of, I'm wondering for looking kind of more towards the future. And then if it does do that, to what end? Is it that they, I'm not sure if you had this in there, but it's like, if it does do that, is it about being able to see more patients? Is it about, you know, patients not having to come in and then say, oh, we're out of sedative, and then they go home, or, you know, like really kind of understanding, like closing that loop a little bit, I guess. And then the other last wonder that I have is also for people who are not as well versed in the dental field, like myself, it might be nice to kind of think of something, you know, having been involved with a few startups before, not personally, but I've worked with startup teams and advised on startup teams. You know, it's always like the, you know, the Uber of sausages or whatever it is, right? Like they always are bringing a model that's kind of familiar to people. It might be helpful to do that because I don't think that the dental model is something that a ton of people are familiar with. And it just kind of helps to create something in someone's mind to kind of say, oh, okay, I understand, like, these are the obstacles here, here's how they're solving for them, and here's, you know, the value that that's going to bring at the end. So, but great job overall. And I really think it was a really nice, clean presentation, and well done in the time that you had.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. We're going to hand the ball off to Ashley now, who will, sorry, just trying to do the sports.
Yeah, no worries. I start making sports analogies and I'm like, oh wait, I don't know any more about the sport than that. I have to stop there with my analogy. I totally do the same thing. But yeah, I have a similar, I wish, I wonder, but I'll go more into the tactical. I think, and I want to just start with one very easy tactical shift that you can make in your presentation, or two. There was literal jumping around that actually ended up making it seem like your concept was jumping around. And I'm breaking the I wish, I wonder. So I like your presentation. I wish that there were not animated GIFs just at the beginning, because there were literal jumps. So either just show a picture or maybe a video, but pictures would be easier, because I kept like, and then with the when you got to the prototype, each screen, it moved to different sides of the screen. Keep it in the same place so that it feels, so that the audience can keep looking at the screen, and we don't have to keep moving and tracking with our eyes different places, and we can actually see more of what you've created, so we can take in more of the design. And literally we will understand more of the design. So that's like very, very practical, tactical logistics way that you guys can design your deck so that you can have like literally a smoother presentation. And then in terms of smoother conceptually, this is one of the reasons why we do storytelling, because like there's this phrase in anthropology where we say like Homo sapiens sapiens are bipedal storytelling like communicating creatures with opposable thumbs or something like that. I don't know, but like storytelling is one of the things that they say that makes us people. So it's like fundamental to us, which is why we use storytelling. It is fundamental in our species. So you have Teresa, and you have Dr. Brooks, right? You have these two characters or these two personas, or the quarterback that we call Dr. Brooks. And so you have your persona, the primary persona, Teresa, and you have this user story and use case, right? And like user story or scenario is Teresa has to order more drugs. She has to order more sedatives, right? This is like such an LA tech thing. Teresa has to order more drugs with an app. She has to order more sedatives. Is this for being recorded? I'm gonna get in trouble again for trying to be funny. No, I'm not trying to be like, I work in D&I. I'm trying to be funny and like keep people interested, because getting feedback can be really an awful experience, and I'm trying to like make it happy. So here's so use case, scenario, user story, use case. The use case is she gets on the phone and uses this app to make it this really, really pleasurable experience. And then you see it. So you put what you see in the app within the context of use of our hero. I'm totally making Nicole laugh. I really do work in D&I, you guys. And my daughter is deaf and has other disabilities. And I literally work in D&I. And I tell people not to make horrible jokes like a regular basis in corporate America. And then I go and do it myself. So anyway, do you understand what I'm talking about? Like you've got all the pieces there, right? You just need to put them, like just move the order a little bit so that you introduce us to the person, you introduce us to their problem, then you put us in the context of use with the problem. Here's a scenario, and then here's the technology that's going to solve the problem. Here she is using the technology to solve the problem. And we see the technology solving it. And I actually really like the split screen where you've got the character we see her using it. So we still have that context of use. And then we've got the prototype in the same spot in the screen. And then we're clicking through, and you can go a little bit slower with that because the audience actually wants to see the changes in the app. And that's your movie, that's your film where the problem's being solved. And then there's a resolution, right? Where now the order's been made. Teresa's got so much more time on her hands, and she's going to go put an order in for next month because she knows like roughly what the order is going to be because she can pull a report from this awesome app. So I love the sports analogy. I love that Tina laid everything out like conceptually, and then I was able to come in and be like, here's some tactics on how you can just rejigger the deck just a little bit to just like lay down the bones so that you can meet Tina's ask. And I think that's what I have to say about that. Are we good with time?
We are good with time. Really well done. So we do have a hard stop at around 2:57 Pacific time. But I did want to give the students a chance to follow up with anything that they had. If you maybe a question from each group, if you have one from our guests about anything that they said or presented. We run a tight ship around here. So students, we'll do a 1 minute hard silence, unless you ask, because I've got a few questions for our guests.
Well, I have a question. I think when Ashley was talking about the TV with touchscreen, I didn't know if that was like what you wish it could also do, or if you thought our project did that. Because otherwise I was just gonna say like, oh no, we're using a remote and we're hoping in the future it could do it through voice. But then at the end I was like, or maybe she's suggesting TVs to have like a touch screen. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
So my daughter thinks every screen is a touch screen. So like when it's really funny because when we go to the pharmacy, there's just this big screen that shows up that just shows like all the prescriptions that you get or whatever. And then there's the little thing. And she just treats it like it's a touch screen. And then when we're ready to go and we're like, okay, thanks, bye-bye. She just presses it like she's done. And she turns and she walks away. So little anecdote there, but I wish that every senior could have a big screen television that was also a touch screen, because the remote can get really tricky for seniors, especially ones with dementia, to learn a new remote and how they would use the remote with that app, especially if the way the remote functions changes depending on if they're watching TV versus the app. And I have a hard time, and I don't have dementia, figuring out how the remote works depending on which app I'm on, whether it's Prime or Discovery Plus or whatever. So, and then also with voice can be challenging. And again, thinking about the deaf population, but then also as you age, you become hard of hearing. Although if you're hard of hearing as you're older, but you were a hearing person when you were younger, possibly the speech recognition wouldn't be as challenging. But my mind just always goes there because I'm always thinking about my kid, and she's deaf, and she does speak, but she'll be more signing than speaking deaf person. So it's just something to think about with accessibility. And I just wish that it was a great big TV that was a touch screen with great big buttons, with great big text and lots of contrast, because that would be perfect for this population. That's what I wish. And if that's not in your design because it wasn't feasible for your MVP, totally fine. And that's what you can tell people. Not feasible for our MVP, but it's in our backlog. And just say that, and everyone will be like, we should hire him.
Oh, thank you.
Nico, Axel, Miguel. Questions, thoughts? Anything you wanted to follow up with, Axel?
Not necessarily a question, but I really appreciate Ash's just take on presentation and deck design, because it's something that I feel is a struggle, and just kind of organizing that in a way that tells the story efficiently. So I just really appreciate that feedback.
Let me tell you, every time I've designed a deck, it's been back ass word. Every time I'm like, hey, can you get feedback? Give me feedback on my deck. And everyone's like, that last slide needs to go first. Like, it took me that long to figure out what I needed to say. Thank you. Okay. So pretty much that's the best feedback that I've ever gotten. And then I'm just passing it along, is that pretty much my last slide is my first and possibly my only slide that I need. And then every other slide can just go in an appendix. Yeah.
Well, that might be a good way to transition. So maybe for our guests, this is graduation. Students will be transitioning from the academic world to the professional world. Do you have any advice for the students as they head out into that wild, wild world?
Yeah. This is like the worst advice ever. Well, the best advice ever is wear sunscreen, especially if you live in LA. That's the best advice. The worst advice, I see Nicole laughing. The worst advice and the best advice combined is that nobody cares and neither should you. And I mean this with all the love in my heart. the like, oh, this really matters. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Like, is it going to kill somebody? Then it matters. Is it not going to kill somebody? Then it doesn't matter. If we are not working in a safety critical environment, it really doesn't matter. So then figure out what matters to you, like as a person and as a professional, and then just kind of use those as your guiding lights. And then just kind of like, go home. I used to say, just do your job and go home. But now we all do our jobs from home. And I'm like, damn it, that doesn't work anymore. Do your job and then get off your computer. Except now we have to order food from our computer. Damn it, it doesn't work anymore. Oh, what do I say? I don't know. Don't take any advice from anybody who's ever giving advice. That's the best piece of advice I can ever give you. Good luck. I'm muting myself now.
Tina Park, you got to follow that up.
I just have two pieces of advice that you don't need to follow because Ash just said not to follow it, but which I totally am fine with too. But I always try and tell people, one is that titles are kind of garbage. Don't chase a title. Instead chase the company. And so if that's, look at companies that you want to work for that's doing things that you want to do. And if they are, saying that they're looking for X title or whatever it is, just apply and just tell them why you think that you'd be a good contribution to their company. And it'll sometimes work. And then, and also then just not to chase a title. I want to be a UX designer because I don't know, whatever. That just means so many different things in different companies, and it's just kind of silly. And then the second thing is that when you go in for an interview, just know and understand that you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So go in with good questions, go in with provocative questions, go in with a point of view, because, and of course, just do all the things to impress them because you want that job. And even if you don't want the job, just act like you want the job. That's really important too. But, just feel that you have the right and you have the ability to kind of ask questions to understand like where the company's going, or I don't know, whatever is important to you. So just remember that that it's important to interview them as much as it is for them to interview you.
Great, and I think that's a good note to end on. So I really just want to end today by thanking, all our guests that we had today. So thank you so much for your time, energy, and advice that you gave. I also want a big round of applause for our students, right? So you're our first COVID class, students who started and end the program through this whole mess. And I know you didn't sign up for this, but finishing this program is a testament to you. So well done. And then finally, for those of you who are watching, there's a perpetuated myth within the design community that designers do it alone. That's rubbish. Great teams build great things. And so I wanted to acknowledge all of you who are out there watching for supporting our students as they've gone through their IxD journey. They couldn't have done it without you. So that's it for today. Take care of yourself and each other, and really well done, healthcare group. So awesome stuff.
Congratulations. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, I'm gonna screen share again, yeah?
And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, we are going to be back with our next set of folks in starting at 3:10. Mixed reality, which is its own fun title.
Is my background backwards or is it the right way?
Looks the right way to me.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to the 2022 IxD Grad Show Live. My name is Luke Johnson, and the projects you'll see today are part of the Senior Studio class. Before we get started, I want to welcome IxD Program Lead Nicole Chan, who will talk about the IxD program, and welcome our esteemed guests.
Yeah, hi, everybody. As Luke said, I'm Nicole Chan. I'm the IxD Program Lead. And the SMC IxD program is very unique. It's the only interaction design bachelor's program at a community college in the United States. And for those watching on YouTube, the IxD program began its first cohort of students in the fall of 2016 as one of 15 pilot bachelor's programs in the state of California. And this past fall, the SMC IxD program was made officially permanent by the state of California. We are excited to graduate this group of seniors, which is our 6th cohort, on Saturday. So I'd like to introduce our special guests. These are the industry experts who will be providing feedback for this group today. So first off, Jenny, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I just want to say thank you so much for the invitation. Really excited to be here. And congratulations to all the graduates. I'm really excited to see all your work. And my background is I'm faculty at Art Center College of Design, and I am the faculty director of the Immersion Lab at the school. So teach a lot of mixed reality from AR to VR and machine learning. So really excited to see what everybody's been working on. And thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, Courtney, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Taylor. I'm an experienced designer. I'm currently working at Snapchat. I was also a IxD student and a graduate. Did a lot of AR and AR-related and XR-related projects while at IxD. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what the current year graduates are working on and see how far the program has come.
Yeah, it's so lovely to see you.
Great to see you too.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, did you say my name?
Yes. Hi.
Okay. Hi, I'm Savannah. Also really excited to see what you all have been working on, and congratulations. It's a really big milestone moment. I work at IDEO. My crafts are software and systems design, and more recently focusing on emerging technology and the future of play.
Great, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So just a bit of context for our guests and those who are watching. This year's senior capstone reflects an 8-week sprint. So not a whole semester, like a really intense 8 weeks. And students were allowed to work individually or as part of a team. Because students were allowed to work in this way, you'll see a variety of different types of projects and presentations. So the individual student presentations will be focused more on presenting a design practice, whereas students and groups will be more pitching a product. And we've also tried to set students around a theme. In this case, it's mixed reality. So just a little bit about the agenda. Students are going to present for about 5 minutes, and then we've assigned each of our guests to give about 10 minutes of feedback. Because we have 3 groups going in this hour session, we're going to be pretty rigorous with our time. But We do hope to have like a small discussion at the end as well, if you want to weigh in on some of the other projects, but really excited to have you. Nicole, do you want to talk about the format?
Yeah, of course. So a feedback structure that we practice a lot in critiques in class is a structure called I like, I wish, I wonder. So typically we start with I like, what went well, what's positive. I wish is a great starting point for what could be done differently or improved. And then I wonder is a great way to frame questions that are still unanswered and provide some ideas. So we're going to go ahead and start with our first presentation, which is Joey. And I was hoping, Jenny, that you might lead the feedback for this presentation.
Sounds great.
Great, thanks. All right, Joey, it's all yours.
Cool. Can everyone hear me and see my screen?
Yes, looks great.
Cool, great. So hey, my name is Joey, and thank you all for giving me this opportunity to present my work today. My background is actually in architecture, computer graphics, and 3D animation. Over the years, I've done a lot of 3D work for projects in a wide variety of industries, which has taught me to be adaptable to collaborate with people who may have different jobs, backgrounds, or skill sets. My career really took a different path the first time I tried a virtual reality headset because I was immediately enamored by the potential. This is an early game I made. My friend's 3-year-old son was always trying to get in his headset, so I designed this game around popping bubbles because I felt like this was a simple interaction that was intuitive and fun enough for a young child to play. I also tried to start a small business providing VR services for the architecture and real estate industry. This project was the virtual reality bathroom designer that I did for a client who owned a kitchen and bath showroom. Through research, I found that people who aren't design professionals have trouble visualizing or imagining how the different products will look together, which creates this pain point with making a final decision. And so to solve this, I wanted to utilize VR's unique ability to visualize and interact with an unbuilt space to allow the user to play with different products and design different options, which would hopefully lead to more confident decision-making. And what I learned from being on the front lines of XR adoption is that while everyone sees the potential value in VR or XR, the experience and the tech were just so new and different that it could be really intimidating for many people to adopt. And so I've really come to believe that a good user experience is that bridge between the potential of an emerging technology like XR and mass adoption by users that can really benefit from it. And this is the idea that led me to the IxD program because I wanted to get a solid understanding of the fundamentals of design thinking and user empathy to help me with what had become this almost obsessive problem of figuring out how do I make XR more accessible to people, to everyone that could really benefit from this new technology. And so this brings me into my senior thesis project, which was to study user interactions and user experience in XR technologies, and then design, prototype, and user test a VR interface that was intuitive, usable, and delightful. Part of my research was analyzing existing interaction systems for XR to identify some commonly used gestures and how they were implemented. These are a few research sketches of existing interaction systems, which sort of helped me process and break down the details of the micro interactions. And from my research, I was able to identify 3 fundamental interaction gestures that I want to study in prototype because it's these gestures that are the way that the user will touch and interact and change the virtual environment. The first is the touch or press interaction used to trigger discrete actions. The second is a grab interaction, which is best used for continuous interactions, such as moving or rotating an object with your hands. And the last is a laser pointer interaction with objects, to interact with objects remote in the space. I found similarities with desktop mouse interfaces, and so I saw the potential to utilize hover states and tooltips and other things like that because it was a mental model that people are already familiar with because of their desktop. And so through research, I also found that there's a typical structure of stages of interactions that you go through, which you can see listed at the top. As the user input triggers each different stage, feedback is required to keep the user informed of what's happening, which can come in the form of animation, visual changes, sound, haptic feedback, or sound or haptic vibration from the controller. And so you can see with this chart how I designed different feedback and affordance mechanisms for each micro interaction type through each step of the interaction process. And so I tried to organize my Unity code based on this structure, and everything starts with inputs from the hands of the motion controllers. The interaction, and there's an interaction controller scripts, which has code to determine which interaction state the object is based on input from colliders or other hand controllers. And as the state changes, this script broadcasts events to the feedback scripts, which handles visual, haptic, and audio feedback. And so based on the state you're in, you'll get a different mix of feedbacks as appropriate for the design to keep the user informed. And the whole point of any interactable is to trigger something. And so when it hits the activation state, It triggers a function in an external script, in this case, the car color change script. This helps me keep things organized and more importantly, make things modular, which allows for faster prototype iterations, more user testing, and better products. So for instance, the user test shows that I need to rethink the visual feedbacks. It makes it easier for me to just swap out that piece of code as opposed to untangling a bunch of different entangled code. But these interaction gestures are just small elements. The next step for me was to combine these interaction gestures into a system that actually allowed you to do something. And so I started out by sketching out a few ideas. And I decided to create a scenario to look at and interact with a car because it allowed me to script tasks to perform during user testing. And so you can see here, the grab gestures are used for continuous manipulation of an interactable mini model. And so you could rotate the car and see it from different angles. The laser pointer interactor can be used to interact with elements on the car, like triggering the door opening, or out in the environment, like teleportation hotspots. Teleporting the user can be a jarring experience, and so I used a long press to prevent accidental teleports and provide visual preparation that something's about to happen. I saw this as similar to a double click on a desktop or a long press on the touchscreen. And then with menus within arm's reach, the user can utilize a button press interaction to perform functions, and in this case, change the color of the car. User testing also found that the hotspots were easy to use, but they felt limiting. Users felt restricted and frustrated because they couldn't go everywhere. I wanted to try something a little different from the typical VR teleportation system, so I started with a sketch. And so you can see in this earlier prototype, it allows you to pick up a small figure and move it in the mini model to go to any location. A little view cone will preview what you will look at when you get to the spot, and then you could drop the figure to teleport the user. And so you can begin to see how these three initial fundamental gestures can be used as building blocks to a bigger interaction system. And so as far as future considerations, I'd like to do obviously more testing, iteration, and polishing. But there was a time when I wanted to be a character animator. And so I had this great appreciation for how animation principles can give character to interactions and personality to the overall product. My work in architecture also helped me understand how much the surrounding environments can affect how a user perceives an experience. And so for future considerations, it's important for me to add visual polish and put this experience in a beautifully rendered space. And with that, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my work. Here are a couple of links to my portfolio and LinkedIn, and I'd love to continue the discussion if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Joey. Really appreciate that. Jenny, do you want to take the lead on this? And then if there's time, Savannah and Courtney can weigh in as well. We have around 8.5 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Congratulations and thank you for your wonderful presentation. And it was very clear. And based on that note, I'd like to start off with a light comment in terms of, I really like how you initially engaged with MR through prototyping, through experience. And so I really like, because I think that's like such a fundamental of engaging with VR, is that the body is active and engaged within the prototyping phase versus just relying on wireframes or existing tools. So I really love that you engage with Unity and allowed the tools and the software to also foster those insights. And then another aspect of that I really liked was your thorough investigation of the current existing micro interactions. So you're setting kind of like a goal or a bar for yourself. So I thought that was really, really clear, and I could follow that, your logic. And then your studies as you moved into Unity, those were also like documented really thoroughly, and they were really clear. And then one aspect I was maybe wishing for, and then I wonder sort of how that might inform the studies moving forward, was how can you document the physical body and the physical tool at the same time? As you're exploring those studies, because I think that's where it'd be useful to kind of go, how is the hardware equally, informing that interaction? Because there's simultaneous micro interactions happening at the same time, both of, if it's a controller, the hardware key is going down and there's a grip, and then therefore then this is, so how is that relationship built and understood? And so I sort of, in the end, I sort of wonder, by understanding more of like the physical human factors of it, how might that add to your story even more and push it forward? It's the difference of like, yeah, a teleport versus like a picking up and dragging and dropping, right? There's different kind of the body of text in a different way. And I think that could be great to add.
Great. Courtney, do you want to add anything on?
Not much. I agree with what Jenny said. Yeah, I think you did a really great job of breaking down kind of the basics of interactions in a VR environment, as well as really trying to understand those like micro interactions, those things like the feedback, which is something that's really hard to achieve in a VR space, getting accurate feedback to the users. As well as what Jenny said, I wish there was some way you could capture what the physical kind of state is of the user interacting with these environments. You know, how comfortable is the user doing these different interactions, and designing for you know, the different kind of states in which a user could be interacting with your prototype. Maybe that's sitting down, standing up, and what the physical body is doing while doing these different interactions, because it may lead to other possible interactions that you may not have thought of. But so far, the depth of your investigation in these different gestures, in grabbing, pressing, and rotating, those are all amazingly detailed, and I think you did a really great job.
Thank you.
Savannah.
Yeah. Also, this is really awesome, and I really love how you showed your full iterative process, and I really appreciate how you're like tying the threads from your past experience as an architect into how that's kind of influencing your thinking now. And I think that's a really big kind of asset in your story, and it's really unique to like how you in particular might think about this problem space. So I would just kind of encourage like continuing to lean into that and to bring that more and more into your work. And I also I loved how you really paid attention to the human elements of it, and you paid attention to user feedback, and then you thought iteratively and creatively about how to solve for those different pieces of it, and sort of took like the thread between bathroom design, 3-year-olds playing, and like into cars, and like figured out kind of what some of the patterns are between those, just in how people interact with the technology, and are using that to kind of build a larger body of understanding of what it means to design in that space. So I think that's really cool. And just similar to what Courtney and Jenny have said, like I would have loved to see more of that live demo, and to get a little bit more like insight and thought about and more insight into the kind of feedback from users and like what that experience looks like, just so that we can like illustrate what you're talking about in your story more than anything.
Well, thank you.
Great. So we've been really efficient. This is an efficient mixed reality group. So well done. We have a few minutes. Joey, is there anything that you have questions about that you want to ask the panel? Just something that you've been noodling on?
No, definitely. I love the idea about like how to document that physical body. And I guess one of my things was always like, how do you use your test in mixed reality? Like, are you looking more at the screen, or are you looking at the person, and like back and forth? Like, do you guys have any sort of advice on how to do that? How do you actually like dissect that, like how a person, or study how a person is using the thing physically?
One great reference for you might be the original kind of human factor designers, Gilbreth. The Gilbreth studies, husband and wife duo, lots and lots of camera views. And then you could always turn on, I don't know, like a trail render to kind of track movement if you wanted to. I've seen that be useful, but have video of the person, and just more camera views are always better. And it'll help you do that additional analysis. And one more thought that you could think about as you move forward in your work is thinking about the history of skeuomorphism and when do you want to leverage a metaphor from the physical world or an existing desktop metaphor. So maybe that could be great as if you're thinking through which metaphors are you leveraging in your micro interaction studies. Because that's something that I always think about with mixed reality of one, we're taking things from desktop PC model into mixed reality versus when are we inventing new versus leveraging existing metaphors of, referencing kids, playing with bubbles. So I think you have it in there and that could be pulled out too.
Well, yeah, that's super helpful.
One thing that I would just add on to that I've been interested in lately is tracking like biometric data. That's kind of interesting to sometimes see like how people's heart rate changes and some of those other things that you can measure just by putting some basic sensors on them. And I think that it's sometimes information that people can't tell you verbally is like actually how things make them feel kind of on a physical level. So just another research tool to play around with.
Because for me, I always like try to track immersiveness. Like when are they immersed in the experience? And like, how do you measure that? Like what are some things that do you guys have any ideas of like how you can measure when someone gets immersed in an XR experience?
You can do this in 30 seconds, Jenny, so that we can move on.
Maybe I'll say maybe let it go because the cell phone's also, something we're really immersed into. Right. So I think sometimes I'm like the term and the language, sometimes sets you back when maybe it's nothing that you have to worry about.
Okay.
All right. Well, really well done. So congratulations, Joey, on a really nice presentation. We're now going to move over to Jennifer.
Hello, just a moment. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Moorhead. I'm a user experience designer here in Los Angeles. And I wanted to start today with a quote from former Pixar founder John Lasseter, who said that art challenges technology and technology inspires art. So in reflecting on my motivations and values as a designer, I realized that the relationship between creativity and technology has been a consistent theme in my personal history. So when I look back at my design journey, it's comically nonlinear, but I did see how technology had been inspiring me from the very beginning. And that beginning was actually in music. And so like any good Asian parent, my mom put a violin in my hands at a pretty early age. And while I loved music, I wasn't really inspired at all by the music I was given to play. So enter technology. So I'm certainly dating myself here, but this was the tech that I had to work with in junior high. And I started to experiment with creating my own music. And I found that if I recorded one violin part into the cassette tape deck and then played it back from another boombox, I could record myself playing along with the original tape and create a harmony. And I did this a few times over until I ended up writing an original violin trio, which I recorded and wrote and performed at the next school concert. This sparked my interest in music production, and later on I realized I just created my own lo-fi 4-track. So I went on to explore digital audio tools like Logic Pro and MIDI, and I really fell in love with how this tech allowed me to extend my musical creativity and translate what was in my head into something I couldn't do on my own. Along with music, I was always doodling in a notebook until I got my hands on a cracked version of Photoshop. And like music, digital illustration tools helped me move beyond my drawing abilities, and I landed a job as a CAD assistant at a shoe company in LA. Now, I thought it was super cool that I got paid to draw, but on the other hand, I was really discouraged by the waste from making all of these synthetic shoe samples, mainly just to send to the buyers. So I wanted to find a creative way to showcase the shoes without having to physically sample them. So 3D modeling tools weren't very accessible at the time. So I built this rotating green screen rig at home with some poster board, paint, and a Lazy Susan. And I developed a process that allowed me to create 360-degree interactive images using a combination of Photoshop, Flash animation, and ActionScript. And I sent this web-based prototype with the sales team so they could potentially bring one digital sample instead of 100 physical ones. That process sparked more interest in how I could use technology to extend my visual ideas beyond 2 dimensions. For a motion graphics course at Noman in LA, I created a speculative interactive sneaker lab where I put myself inside the scene using a mashup of 2D visualizations in a 3D space, and I explored 3D camera work for the first time. Fast forward to returning to school at SMC and transitioning into UX design. I learned that cool visualizations don't really carry any weight without research and a story to validate them. But I also learned the value of talking to people, and I learned how creative tech is affording everyday people the ability to do extraordinary things, from science to healthcare to arts and entertainment, yet many of these tools are still a little bit out of reach to the masses. So my goal, I've realized, is to help create products and experiences that enable a more diverse set of people to share their story. SPECS project during this program is a mixed reality learning concept where creative professionals can level up their skills via peer-to-peer immersive content. And this process challenged me to let go of unknown constraints to imagine how people can leverage tech to empower themselves and others through a virtual community. Your Health Advocate, a project to reimagine health services, is a conversational chatbot concept for patient advocacy. I learned how utilizing AI in connection with digital communities can help gain much needed insights into unseen and unheard patients to help address the racial and gender disparities in our healthcare system. So my final capstone project, River, is a creative virtual reality app concept, and it aims to remove the barriers to immersive experiences and extend engagement to a wider audience. So most current creative VR apps are designed for skilled 3D modelers and artists and typically require expensive hardware, technical knowledge, and have limited discoverability outside of VR. River's mission is to empower everyone to create and share stories in VR. So by making community content accessible from within the app, creators can interact with stories and be inspired to create their own. And because starting from scratch, especially in VR, can be really daunting for new users, Rivers allows creators to remix community content and provides templates and assets to spark ideas. Stories can also be shared outside of VR via video, GIF, or linkable WebXR. Now, this project still has much to be explored, but I'm looking forward to discovering how immersive technologies can inspire a new generation of creative storytellers. And thank you for listening to my story, and I look forward to your feedback.
Great, really well done, Jennifer. Savannah, do you mind taking the lead on feedback to start?
Yeah. Also, congratulations. This is really awesome. And it's really fun to hear about your journey. One thing in particular that I liked is just like generally how you've used digital physical prototyping throughout your life and career in all of these different ways. And especially like in using just whatever technology is available to you, but not stopping there and like evolving your practice with how technology is evolving. Like tape recorders to AI and VR is like a really beautiful overtime journey. So I really appreciate that. I have two I wishes. One is that I wish that I could see a little bit more connection between like your past work and then like how you got to that like headliner goal, and just to like understand a little bit more of like, you know, what that means to you personally and like how that shift happened, and just to kind of dig into the story a little bit more. And I also I said I wish to see a little bit more of like where the inspiration comes from for that final concept. I think that it's like a really wonderful kind of mission behind the work, and I want to see like you know, the type of testing, the type of users, and like the types of products or experiences that kind of informed the end product that you are building out. And then also I really love the inspiring a new generation of immersive and creative storytellers. I think that's a really beautiful, another beautiful like headline statement.
Jenny.
Congratulations, Jennifer. Thank you so much for a really wonderful presentation. I really liked how you went through your background, and I was excited about your background and understanding, like, as I took it, you were doing 3D scanning and photogrammetry, or proposing that with the shoe when you're showing that section. So I think that's really great that you bring that understanding of the Z space into your mixed reality work. And I was thinking about maybe a wish I had was maybe to understand how you were defining story for your project, because sometimes I feel like it's such a broad term and that I don't really sometimes know, because like as a designer, maybe we have a different understanding of story versus somebody who's much more of a filmmaker or writer. So I think that was a part that I wonder how you're thinking mixed reality maybe changes storytelling, or does it make it more spatial? Just maybe a little bit more insights around like story, and with mixed reality, how does that kind of change a format of maybe linear storytelling or something like that? I think that would really help, or think about next steps for your project.
And Court, if you want to add anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. I enjoyed your presentation a lot. I really admire the goal of making VR technology more accessible to the general population, not just your creative industry focused people. I think that's something that VR and the XR industry needs more of, especially just making it more accessible to the masses. So definitely, I think that's a worthwhile goal. And I really enjoyed your journey and how you talk about the really kind of expansive background that you have in different fields, and how you creatively problem solve, even as like a child. Creative problem solve just ways to make your creative ideas happen in these unique ways. And I think that plays a lot into your end goal of making VR technology more accessible, and VR creativity specifically more accessible. So I think that thread shown very well throughout your presentation. So I like that a lot. I wish I could hear more about how you ideated and came to that design, how you came to your final prototype of creating this platform to make creations. Yeah, like I wish I could see kind of like some earlier prototypes, or some earlier kind of iterations of it, or other ideas you may have been exploring in order to come to your final goal. But otherwise, yeah, I think it was a great project. Thank you for sharing.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. We have a few minutes if you have any questions for the panel that you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, one, thank you so much for all your feedback and for coming here to listen to us. It's really helpful anytime we get someone else to share and get fresh ears. I think one, relating the idea of like storytellers, and wondering, like Jenny, like what that means to you, because I really struggled with how to share that idea of this, because really they're moments, they're immersive moments, or these interactions. And then I find that everyone is now a storyteller all of a sudden today. So I really struggled with what was the most relatable way to express the idea that people can share something that they've created that's more than a drawing, a song, a thing. It's something you interact with, but I'm trying to find the actual question, but to be more specific than story, how would you capture an immersive moment that someone wants to share?
Maybe, I mean, I think there's lots of answers to that potentially, but I'd say definitely go back to maybe what are the fundamental, like, unique attributes of mixed reality? I think that'll help you answer. Because I was even thinking of, like, the fact that, again, it's got Z space, it is about space fundamentally. So I think, how do you leverage the spatial aspect of it more so? Because, yeah, as a way to differentiate it from like just an image, which is like, okay, we've got many examples of, being able to consume sort of a moment or an image or a story through cell phones as well. So I think that's where it's always really useful, I think, for people to start to think about, yeah, but why that tech? Why this particular platform? And so that's something I think maybe that would be the way moving forward on how to best answer that.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else from the panel want to weigh in on that? Or Jennifer, do you have another question that you wanted to ask as well?
Not at the moment.
I'll add something. I think something that makes the medium interesting is that interaction. I think if there's some way for you to capture, just the interaction, even just like the flowing of like a paintbrush across the screen, and like it's those moments of interaction that's like kind of what tells the story in this medium. I think, what does it feel like to be able to like see the paint flowing? Like if you've ever, opened up one of those painting programs or creator programs, like to see the thing you created appear right in front of you, those like moments of creation, and making that something that anyone can do. I think that's the very special kind of moment of very special storytelling moment for creatives. The act of creating, and then the ability to step back and see your creation when it's done. I think that's a very powerful story that you could tell. That's unique to VR, and something that would relate to any creative. I think that would be a good way to go.
Yeah, it could be great if you think about like, do you want to focus on creation or more of like the telling too? I think to build on that, that could be great to help you figure out what is the emphasis of the priority of it.
I appreciate that. I think that was a struggle. And I think my goal here was actually to combine them, because I feel that there's one avenue right now to tell, and then the other avenue is to create. And then the creators walk into the creative space and they don't know where to start. So to allow them to see what they can do within the same space. Yeah, thank you.
Really nice job, Jennifer. So round of applause for Jennifer on a really wonderful project. We have our last group coming up, and I wanted to introduce them. They are the next group we have is the Dating App group with Sienna, Emily, Victoria, and Zoe. They're going to be presenting Tinder 99, which is a speculative design piece reimagining the future of modern dating. A lot of their initial work was focused heavily on researching dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge using the 5-week timeline. So very quick, they created a thought-provoking piece that is more powerful than just another dating app. Take it away.
Thank you, Luke. So dating has come a long way. We're far from the days of jousting for a maiden's attention, and I'm sure most of us don't expect to be in an arranged marriage anytime soon. Building romantic connections can now be as simple as picking up your phone and swiping your way into a new love life. In many ways, dating apps do much of the guesswork for us. The actual question is just how much are we going to let the dating apps control our dating life?
With new tech comes new dating, but what will the future of dating look like? We reimagine what it means to push the limits on how much of a role the algorithm plays in the user's dating lives. Next, we're going to show you a video between two people, Miles and Jules, who lived in a world where it's normal for Tinder to predict their future together.
Yeah, okay, I'm back, got fresh on the scene. Franchise best on the team. Blue faces busting out the scene. New life is something like a dream.
So as you saw in the video, Miles and Jules didn't work out. But whose fault was it really? Was it the algorithm who matched them, or the dating apps in general, or Miles' desire for greener grass? Well, we'll dive deeper into that discussion, but first, we don't need another dating app, and here's why. Dating apps are designed to categorize people. Things like height, ethnicity, and occupation are not good indicators of a sustainable relationship. Yet, dating apps still show you people based on these characteristics. These apps are built off algorithms with superficial filters that add to people's biases when trying to find matches.
What we're trying to say is dating apps don't make money finding you a relationship the same way that casinos don't make money when you win. The whole system is designed to be a dopamine factory, and with each match, you get a surge that keeps you coming back for more. There are still ways to win. Of course, searching for a hookup could offer you a small return on investment, but if you're looking for something long-term and sustainable, the jackpot is harder to hit than you could imagine.
Before it was normal to date online, people would be forced to choose partners based on proximity. We were like fishes in a pond, but now we face the ocean. We look at potential partners through the paradox of choice. When you have a lot of options, every option is very similar to the other. So when you do make a choice, you'll always be attracted by the few things which you could have gotten had you taken a different decision. Hence, you'll be less satisfied overall by your decision. We were never meant to know how many options were available to us. Another problem is that there's so many dating apps available now and that they all serve the same purpose. These apps want to get you hooked so that you keep swiping, and ultimately fish swim in the same pond, so don't be surprised if you match with Max on Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble all at the same time. At this point, it's also unlikely that the corporations behind these dating apps suddenly have a change of heart to completely remodel their business, so they want to keep you hooked. With this in mind, we knew that the most productive thing to focus on wasn't creating another dating app. It's about how to start a conversation on how we respond to the influence of them. It's not like these dating apps are the ones breaking up or ghosting people, and they don't force anyone to make the choices that they make. Even though they do play a big part of the problem because of the way they're designed, we still have a choice.
As we've shown you, dating is a whole different story these days. In 2012, Tinder burst into the scene and changed the way we date forever. Now we're in 2022, a whole decade has passed. Can you believe how fast time flies? The point is, time moves faster than we can account for, and we are closer to this reality than we think. We want you to use our project as the starting point to a discussion about how technology influences your personal decision-making when it comes to dating.
At the end of the day, Miles had a choice with Jules, and the algorithm was just a tool that he used to make that decision with. No one's perfect, and if you keep swiping for 100%, you may never find it. Connection is not based on an algorithm telling you that someone is a 100% match for you. Connection is based on you and the individual you chose to build a relationship with through the ups and downs. So would you give up on someone you love just because an algorithm told you that you may find someone who has a higher compatibility rate with you?
Algorithms have a huge impact on our lives, often without us even noticing. We make thousands of decisions every day that are influenced by technology. But how many of these decisions do we actually make ourselves? Thank you, and we look forward to your feedback.
All right, thank you so much, team. I feel like we need to suspend you from graduating until you can get Jules and Miles back together. That was a really compelling story. Courtney, you're gonna take the lead on the feedback for this one. All right.
Sure. Yeah, wow, that was amazing storytelling. I was I was enthralled the entire time. Yeah, I think this is an amazing project, and especially the way that you told the story. It also brings up a lot of questions about how much algorithms really play a part in our decision-making process, and how we as designers should think about how we design these systems, because they have such an important part to play in people's lives. I think it's a really important project, and you guys did an amazing job at telling the story and really hitting on the hard hitting questions. I really enjoyed the part where you compared it to a casino and how casinos don't make money when you win, same as these dating app companies. So I think you all did an amazing job, and I really enjoyed the storytelling, the design, as well as the overarching theme of the project and how you approached it. So great job, everyone.
Thank you, Courtney. Savannah, do you want to go next? And Jenny?
Yeah. Also really love the storytelling. I was like, it feels like this is like the like presentation version of like a Black Mirror episode. I don't know if you've seen that show, but it was like, what do we do? It was pretty cool. I wonder, like, you know, since dating is a fundamental need, like what is the alternative, and what's the kind of new framework? And like, you know, I'm curious, like what the so what is coming out of this. And you know, I've been sufficiently scared. So how do we think about this moving forward? And then I also, like, in that vein, kind of wonder what like academic research this could lean into. I know that there's been a lot of like academic study about this over very long periods of time around how people connect and how they make these types of decisions, and you know, how technology like is and is not intersecting with that well. So I'm curious, like, if there are examples out in the world of like either industry products or academic, you know, understanding that can help to describe what the pathway forward is. But all in all, I thought that this was really engaging and interesting, and thank you for digging into it so deeply.
Yeah, just want to echo all the feedback. Just congratulations on a really wonderful story, and I really enjoyed how you brought your proposal and introduce it right at the beginning. So it made it really clear to me that this felt like more of a product or project proposal, just in terms of the narrative structure. So as a group, I felt that worked really nicely. And I thought I really liked how you set it up of like the problem here. It was really clear, you know, this culture of dating, and we're just like perpetuating the problem by offering up more, like this sort of endless ocean. So I thought that metaphor was useful. I understood what you were trying to say from that, and I understood how your you know, speculative proposal is like perpetuating that to kind of like go, what can we do? So I thought overall you set everything up nicely. And I think maybe I'll echo some of the feedback around, like, I was starting, which speculative projects do is they meant to get your audience to wonder. And then so my brain can't help, and maybe that's the whole point, is my brain's going, well, what do we do about that? What are you arguing for then? Is it about, you know, going opposite of that, of like not tracking or not doing predictive, you know, predictive dating setups? And maybe that's what you want, is for more of my brain to sort of dance in that area around like, what can we do about this, because it's clearly heading there anyways. And so yeah, I think it might be great to have like maybe one more slide, and maybe that's your next step, is sort of like, what do you want to argue for as designers, right, who craft the other propositions of like, what do we do about this? I think that could be like a nice end note to maybe ensure that maybe everyone, your audience's minds kind of end up in the same area as interaction designers. But again, of course, it's depending upon maybe who you want to speak to with the project.
Great, and I think that's a great transition to you know, the team. Is there anything that you you know, want to follow up with, or have additional questions? You're curious about anything that you've heard today?
I guess I'm kind of curious from a speculative design perspective. So we did a lot of research that we kind of like sprinkled in, but didn't really go into detail about everything we did in this presentation. From a speculative design like perspective, would it have been impactful if we included that research as well, or do you think it would have hindered our story?
You mean give like attribution to the papers that you read? Is that?
Give more like context to the kind of research we did, because we did like we did subject expert interviews, we like scoured the web for articles, we did a survey. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you're doing a great job of summarizing it. I mean, I think, yeah, you could always have like an additional reference slide if you're like, if people are curious about your, or you could do a summary of here's all the research we've done, do a recap, keep it to one slide. I think it's just more of the, you kind of have our brains going around like, okay, what could we do about this? So now that's equally, you know, often maybe hinting at if there's anything that came up in your team discussions that you'd, now that you've learned all this, what do you want to do about it as interaction designers? That would be great.
Yeah, I think as a team going through this process, we came to the like definitive decision that it's a societal issue, and it's not something that a product or an app or something that we can design can change. It's more so bringing a perspective to people so that they can make the changes in their own lives.
One reference, something that you could consider is maybe it's about arguing for designers to be more aware of the data that is collected and maybe argue for on their behalf, like certain data rights within dating, which is so intimate. So maybe that would be an opportunity for you to, yeah, link that in around like how could designers actually interfere within this as advocates of users? You know, I think you could really get into more of the data science. I know a good reference of the predictive policing model here in LA, which a lot of the data, it was kind of a lie in general. So it doesn't always, you know, what is 90%? You could really get into like maybe more around like, what are the attributes that you imagine getting factored in? And what are attributes that you're like, oh, we shouldn't collect this? Or maybe, yeah, I think that could be useful to get maybe more into the messy details could help reveal that.
And think also like you could leave with questions of like, if it's a societal problem, then like what are like the options? You know, is it like everybody needs a lot of therapy? Is that the thing? Is it that in kindergarten, people need to learn how to relate to each other? Is it like, you know, a campaign that is at every coffee shop where people have first dates or cocktail bar or whatever it is? Like, what are some of like the things that you could play with? And on the academic or like on the citing question, I think that there's sometimes like legitimizing that can happen if you like say like, you know, this well-known like relationship researcher or like, you know, Tinder's head of something like said this thing about how toxic dating is, and that will sort of illustrate the research as it is showing up like in your story rather than like having it be a separate thing.
Yeah, that's some really good feedback. And you know, when this group was going through this, it was like very clear that they had gone into a really deep opportunity space to the point where we were like, this is a grad school project. So not recommending more school necessarily, but it's a really lovely and deep project, and especially what this group accomplished in a very short amount of time. In fact, all three of our participants. So congratulations. Before we head out and exit today, I've been asking our experts if they don't mind giving a word of advice as students start to transition from academia into the professional world. And Courtney, maybe we can start with you, having gone through the program and somewhat recently. And thank you for coming back as well. So we'll start with Courtney.
Sure. Yeah, I would say that as you transition out of school and into the job market, just stay confident, and stay passionate about what you're interested in. People will recognize that passion. People will recognize that confidence. Just continue to believe in yourself as a designer. Imposter syndrome is real. Don't let it defeat you. Just continue, practicing what you learned at IXD, continuing to, like I said, believe in yourself as a designer, and know that, it's all a learning process. Even in the job field, when you get your job, like, you're not expected to know everything. You're always going to be learning something. So, don't feel bad about being the junior on the team. Just continue doing what you know how to do, being a good designer, and make sure you stick to your own values as a designer and stand up for what you believe in. And yeah, I would just say, just believe in yourself, and you'll find a place that you belong in, a place that you feel comfortable in, I think. Yeah.
Savannah?
I feel like you just said like some of the most important things. So thank you for that message. Yeah, I think that like coming out into the world is like, it's really exciting. And also you get into your work and you're like, who am I and where did I come from and who are these people? And it's like really easy to kind of forget the fact that you know what you're doing, you have a little bit of practice and experience, and it's really about just like repeating that and getting more and more comfortable with it. So I'd keep kind of leaning into it and hold yourself at the center of it, and always always be kind of connecting back with this group of people and other people who can continue to kind of be on the journey with you, since it's definitely like has some specific stages that you're all gonna go through together. And then the other thing I'd say is I think that like when you join companies, it's like easy to sort of get siloed into like how that company thinks and works about like within design. And so considering ways to like continue to just explore like what else is interesting to you and what is possible, what's on the leading edge, and like and bringing that in as kind of fresh inspiration to your work and to whatever career you'll have after. So keep playing.
Congratulations, everybody. I'd say this is just the start of like your lifelong learning career. It never stops, and it always is torturous and changes all the time. So if you're questioning yourself of what am I doing, where am I going, it never goes away. This will just be start of many of those chapters, but I'd say maybe be open to where the path takes you, and be open to maybe a place that you'd never thought you'd go or end up. I think sometimes those are where everybody's looking to go at these same places that actually really focus more so on what's best for you. Not the coolest, not the, oh, it sounds like a good name drop. Just go for the thing that you're like, I just want to do, if I could do this all day long, then I'd be happy. Really, really find that. And I think it's always in very unexpected places. So I'd say just be open for the rest of your career about kind of surprises that happen. And look forward to hearing about where all of you end up, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Some priceless advice from our three guests. So I wanted to, before we end today, I wanted to thank three groups of people, and our first is our guest. So a big round of applause, and a big thank you for the guests who came today. So really well done. Thank you. I also want to give a big round of applause to our students, right? So you're the first COVID class, students who started and ended the program during this time. And I know you didn't sign up for this, but really well done. And finishing the program is a true testament to you. And then finally, for those of you who are watching, there's a perpetuated myth within design that designers do it alone, and that is rubbish. So it's great teams that build great products. So I wanted to acknowledge all of those of you who are watching for supporting our students through their IXD journey. You are part of their success. So that's it for today. Take care of yourself and each other, and we'll be back at 4:20 with our final group who is doing gaming. But thank you, everyone. Really, really well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the feedback and everything.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We're going to get started here, and welcome to the 2022 IxD Grad Show Live. My name is Luke Johnson, and the projects you'll see today are part of the Senior Studio class. Before we get started, I want to welcome IxD Program Lead Nicole Chan, who will talk about the IxD program, and welcome our guest.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Nicole Chan, and as Luke mentioned, I am the IxD Program Lead. So SMC IxD program is very unique. It's the only interaction design bachelor's program at a community college in the United States. And for those watching on YouTube, the IxD program began its first cohort of students in the fall of 2016 as one of 15 pilot bachelor's programs in the state of California. And this past fall, the SMC IxD program was made officially permanent by the state of California. And we are excited to graduate this sixth cohort this coming Saturday. So I'd like to kick off by introducing our special guest. This is an industry expert who's going to be providing feedback today. So Jeff, do you want to have a quick hello and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Moore. I think for some of you, I have taught, sorry, there's a truck outside. I have taught a session with Luke for a couple of the classes. I've been involved actually, I think, since 2016 with the program. So I am, most of you would have met me. I'm a product manager in the video game space. I used to work at Riot Games, and I was in the kids education space working for Begin, a New York-based firm. And then now I'm in Vancouver working for a company called Phoenix Labs as a product manager on an R&D product. And I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone's projects today.
Great. And yeah, we are really lucky to have Jeff. He's a friend of the program, has been here for a while and works in the space. So we've got two designers who have done their senior capstone in the gaming space. So Jeff is going to be able to provide some feedback today. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, this year's senior capstone reflects an 8-week sprint. So students were allowed to work individually or as part of a team, and both Irene and Alice took the very brave step of working individually. So the projects you see will focus not only on their capstone, but also talk about more of their presentation as a design practice as a whole, so you'll get a more holistic overview. As far as the agenda for today, students are going to present 5 minutes, and then we will have a 10-minute feedback session. So Nicole, turn it over to you for that.
Yeah. So a form of feedback and a structure that we practice a lot in our program is the I like, I wish, I wonder method. So we like to start off with I like, which is great for saying what went well or what is positive. And then I wish is a great starting point for what could be done differently or improved upon. And then I wonder is a really awesome moment for questions that might still be unanswered or any ideas of how maybe you could move forward with a project. So that's the framework that we're going to be practicing today. So we'll go ahead and start with, Alice. Alice, I'm so sorry, Alice. We're going to start with Alice.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen. One sec. Yeah, is this good? Oh God. Yeah, so does my screen look good? Is there something over it?
Looks awesome.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Alice, and I would like to introduce myself as an undercover alien. And let me tell you how I ended up here as a game designer on planet Earth. But first off, I will be introducing some terminologies used in my world. Our classification system uses the autistic class and the allistic class. And the autistic class populates approximately 1 to 2% of the human population, and many go through their life without knowing that they have a neurological difference, and it may be more prevalent than most people might think. Here's a mini character stat window. I tend to see the world in patterns, which allows for a faster ability to pick up and learn skills and often lead to intuitive revelations during neurotic times of the night. On the other hand, my social skills and sensory tolerance are heavily nerfed, but sometimes a debuff could actually be a blessing in disguise. For instance, in order to pass the minimum level of social graces, I utilize and refine other parts of my brain, such as pattern recognition, to draw logical conclusions and how to best respond. But that response can be slowed down heavily by environmental distractions, such as being at the supermarket, which can sometimes be overwhelming. But it is a result of heightened visual and sensory processing and having greater intuition for designing for accessibility. Autistic individuals process the world entirely differently, and I embrace that neurological difference because it enhances the qualities that make me unique and a better designer. For example, in exchange for a normal social life, I find enjoyment in refining my skills with godlike focus at whatever interest I have at the time. These interests tend to revolve around acquiring proficiency within creative and technical subjects, which has allowed me to become a highly adaptable, multidisciplinary designer. Studies have shown that autistic individuals have heightened sensitivity in visual processing and a higher capacity to process information, which can lead to sensory overload. Thus, I tend to lean towards minimalistic styles and muted colors to alleviate the senses and reduce obscurity within my designs. And because autistic individuals process the world vastly differently from the majority of the human population, it often leads to out-of-the-box thinking. I like to make my design process fun, so in one of my projects, I redesigned a dog park using the build mechanic in a life simulation game called The Sims 4, taking work and play into a literal sense. And to make the everyday mundane a little less mundane, I designed an email client where you can feed your trash mail to a monster. I like to gamify my design solutions because I love video games. One day I was very bored and I couldn't find a game to play, so I thought I should make one myself that I'd actually play. So introducing my recent passion project in indie game development, I present to you Peasant to Noble.
Welcome to the Victorian era. Starting as a young peasant, climb the social ladder, jumping from one job to the next. Upgrade your home, clothes, and get an education. Pick up gold off the streets. Immerse yourself in a heartwarming journey through love and discovery. Go on and climb your way into nobility. Peasant to Noble, coming this year in the App Store. Welcome to the...
I started an Instagram page to market my game at a more personal level and document my progress from being a total beginner to becoming a pro. A lot of people express their interest in my game, and some have fallen into emotional turmoil because the game has yet to be released. And since the game is based on much of my personal interest and gaming preferences, I added a love storyline based on historical fantasy visual novels in the form of Stardew Valley heart events, which show short scene snippets. I then created a website to show all the current game info, how to connect with me, and support my game via donations on Ko-fi. If you'd like to support, you can follow me on Instagram or donate some coffee money towards my Ko-fi. And I greatly love and appreciate any support that can help make this project a reality. Thanks for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts and advice. And yeah, yep, that's it.
Great job, Alice. Really well done. So Jeff, we're going to turn it over to you. We have, 10 minutes. We don't have to use the entire time, but anything that any feedback you give on Alice would be awesome.
Sure. I will start with I like the visual style of the deck. Obviously, I think we have a similar tonal preference of limited black and white text on white. We make decisions, not decks, which I really echo with. I think with the game, I wish we'd gotten to it sooner. I mean, I think you do a great job of sort of expressing who you are in this instance and so forth, but we get to know you, and I sort of wish I was seeing more of you expressed through what you had built so much sooner. Because for me, when I saw the game, and then when you even had a 30-second like teaser trailer for social, I was like, oh shit, okay, we've got gameplay mechanics, we've got a thought out process for like how you want to progress in like a mobile idle game from where you're going to the endpoint. And I think you did a good job of that. I actually wonder if you had led more with the romance element in the mobile game space and talked about the merger of those two things as how you were now approaching it within that expression. Because I think that that's a space, the sort of like JRPG twine visual storytelling mixed with mobile games is a really interesting space that I think is starting to get explored more and more. And you bringing your lens to that sooner would have been, I think, a really compelling way to do that. And then you could have actually gone through more of the interaction mechanics that you had built for the experience, both in paper design and then in reality, and talked about like, here's my approach to try to make my own take on idle and what's compelling about this and what would drive that. Yeah, that's my gut reaction. So I want to stop with that, see if you have any questions to that, and then also like broadly ask Alice, like, what questions do you have for me, or are you curious about feedback on that you want to dig from this?
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. I did kind of feel like I should have talked about the game more for sure. In terms of questions I have,
or what feedback are you interested in getting? Like, what are the things that you also want? You're like, I wish I'd got, like, what's the thing that if I don't give you feedback on it in this conversation afterwards, you're gonna be like, fuck, I should have asked that.
Oh God.
It's okay. You're overthinking it. Just chill.
How do I get more money without putting more work?
How do you get more money without putting more work? I mean, if your real conversation here is like, how do you turn this specific thing into a career? My answer is that you don't turn this into the career. Is that you actually uncouple the game as a passion project from the career. What you do is you leverage the game and the representation of, hey, I can do the following roles that took up this game, and use that to get an opportunity in a studio or in a work environment, and use that to fund the game. If you conflate trying to fund the game with your own success, you're putting an enormous amount of hurdles in front of yourself immediately out of the gate, right? But what I actually think you do have is you have a really compelling opening piece for a portfolio that you could bring to a studio to say, hey, I can do graphic design, I can do motion design, I can do game design, I can bring these assets or help you bring assets into a social space and build teaser trailers and whatever. Taking those skill sets to a studio and finding an opportunity in the door allows you to then fund and expand that project. And the other part is, any gaming studio, you'll have an IP declaration when you start, and you just declare the game when you begin, and then it's yours, and you can keep working on the side while you're at that studio. And getting those skill sets while also getting a paycheck to do it. Anyone else I know who funds any games on their own, as someone who did it very early in my career, like, it's a terrible ramen noodle filled life of abject poverty. And at the end of it, like, it's never worth it. Like, the Stardew Valleys of the story, right, are these incredibly compelling, amazing stories of like a true triumph of games. But for every Stardew Valley, there's 1,000 people who don't. And so it's better to like figure out how to take what you're learning to get the stability to then build it how you want. Because the other part is, you're going to feel an enormous amount of pressure as you get into the space. If you wanted to Patreon fund and start doing that, and you won't get to design the game you want. You'll start to have to designing the game that your Patreons want. And I feel there's a very clear vision you have for it. And so follow that vision by supporting yourself in other ways. because also you're trying to make mobile romance games, and like, let's be clear, that's niche. It's great.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thanks for all the advice. That is something that I was like kind of scared to get into, is like receiving a lot of funding from like just random people on like Patreon or something.
It can come, especially in the romance space, it can come with a lot of strings and can also put a lot of pressure for you to go in directions that you may not want to go in with your product.
Yeah.
But like, I see inside of that like an enormous amount of multitude of skill sets that you could take in all sorts of different directions into a studio.
Okay. Now that I think of it, money isn't really a concern right now.
Great.
Yep.
I mean, then keep working on it.
Yeah. Thanks for the feedback.
No worries. Any other questions or thoughts you want to talk about?
What are some, like, I guess like, this is my first game that I would ever release. So like, are there any like pitfalls I should avoid?
A million.
Well, what are some of them?
Yeah. First of all, I believe Luke connected you with a contact that I put him in contact with, right?
Oh yeah, you did.
Right. Okay. So I want to be very clear, is far more knowledgeable about the pure indie game space than I am. But I would say, and I'm not saying her name because this is going to go on YouTube, and I just want to make sure that she doesn't then get blasted by people. But she's an amazing resource. She's so knowledgeable with this space and incredible. I would say if this is your first game, feedback I have is you have a clear sense of the design vision you want to make with this. That's very clear. You've both expressed that through the design and through this chat. Don't lose sight of that, and don't overcomplicate it. The most important part about your first game in the indie game space, or your first couple of games, is actually getting them done and shipped. The impressive part, especially if you're trying to leverage those into getting funding later for bigger projects or joining other teams and so forth, is actually following through on the ship. And so make sure you set clear milestones of how you want to get to that place and what that would be. And remember, if you played Stardew Valley from the beginning, that game launched in a state dramatically different than it is now. And it effectively launched as a live service product. Think of that kind of structure of how you want to do this, right? And how you want to approach it in a way that'll allow you to do that. I would say within the space you're going into, especially, keep exploring the romance cross-idle game. I think that's a space that has a lot to offer. I think it's very unique. I think given your art style, there's a lot you can play with there that's really fun and engaging and delightful. And I wouldn't shy away from that. Don't hesitate to put the game down though for a little while to bring other ideas to a level that you can then set those down, if that makes sense. Because I'm sure as you're working on this and you're so focused, another idea will pop in your head and it may not actually be relevant to this game. Take the time not to burn out and follow that path and do that. And then just don't over expect from yourself. Shipping a game is something that very few people will do on their own. That in of itself is the achievement that you should be delighted in and that you should celebrate. Like, that is an achievement that very few people on the planet ever pull off, right? So focus on that achievement, not on do you outdo Stardew Valley or, choose your FTL, your Into the Breach or whatever. Focus on that accomplishment and setting that bar for yourself.
Okay, thanks.
No worries.
Great. Really enthralling conversation. Thank you so much for that. And Alice, this is an incredible project. Thank you for setting a bar that will be very, very, very high. Irene, no pressure, but I love the direction and thought you were taking it, which is completely separate and different, but in this space. So Irene, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks. Let me just set myself up really quick.
As you're pulling this up, I just wanted to say, like, this has been really exciting to have, two students sort of declare like this is a space that they're interested in going in, and you both have really sort of set the tone for what we expect to be more students along this path. So, Irene, go for
All
it.
right. So hi, folks. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Irene Rivera, a UX designer that's obsessed with UX research or using UX research to help others be seen. My journey into design is very nonlinear. I'm a first-gen college student who previously worked in the mental and physical health space for more than 8 years. But I'm super grateful about working in healthcare as it indirectly introduced me to UX design. Well, bad UX design, that is. You see, a lot of digital healthcare tools I use made me curious on how I can improve them. So I signed up for graphic design courses at SMC and applied to the IxD program. Initially, I thought all courses would center around visual design, but as I worked on a design research project that focused on creating community at SMC, I learned the importance of connecting with the intended audience and learning their needs, wants, and motivations. Gaining these insights provided a solid design strategy and a meaningful concept that students would actually use. Since then, I've gravitated towards the UX researcher role for many of the projects. In the fall of 2021, I worked on a partnership project with Grand Park, a public space in downtown Los Angeles. Grand Park wanted to increase repeat visitors and encourage Grand Park advocates to rally Grand Park as a park for everyone. So while I interviewed, observed, and conducted user testing, I gathered data that showed a need for more kid-friendly recreational activities at the park. With the new awareness, I established the building blocks of a scavenger hunt that a whole family can enjoy. Outside of the IxD program, I took part in a partnership project with Snapchat's Design Academy. I was both the UX designer and UX research for this project, particularly on the beta product feature Snapchat layer. Snapchat needed this feature to be extended outside for-profit partnerships into a community that heavily uses Snapchat. That's queer, Black, Indigenous people of color. In interviewing the community, I was able to find that there's a need to provide local resources such as internships, jobs, and mental health therapy. My insights guided the project to develop an interactive map layer that allows users to search, favorite, RSVP, and share with each other and their allies these events. To hone in on my research skills, I worked alongside with seasoned UX researchers by volunteering at Running Start, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that helps women run for political office. They needed a website redesign that would increase young women to sign up for their programs. And through concept and usability test findings, I was able to uncover that the brand identity and mission statement on the website were barriers for young women to connect and relate to the organization. In turn, this was hurting their sign-up rate. So I provided a summary report with suggestions in making the website be more transparent and authentic to their target audience. Throughout the semesters, I've been able to use UX design and UX research to help different communities be seen. Now I want to extend that to another community that I'm proud to be part of, and that's gaming. In gaming, I was fascinated by a new genre of games, blockchain games. They use cryptocurrencies to allow players to earn crypto, as well as purchase in-game assets and sell them to others for real-world money. So I started off by analyzing competitor blockchain game titles and speaking to crypto gamers. And I uncovered that finding a legit crypto game to play and invest in takes a lot of research and time. I also learned that a big part of deciding on what game to invest in is done by watching YouTube gaming influencers. So I designed GFi Hub, a crypto game hub that uses video review clips from verified gaming influencers to help discover crypto games. It also provides a quick overview on return on investment, a grind star rating system that allows players to instantly know how much work they need to put in to see an investment. I've only touched the tip of the iceberg in the realm of games, UX design, and research. So I'm excited to continue on this journey by teaming up with an indie game developer for Indie Kate's Fall Festival. My goal is to understand the process of running successful playtest sessions and using that feedback to serve as a voice for the player base and guide the evolution of games in development. Additionally, I'm continuing to grow my visual design skills by coaching the next generation of designers from underrepresented communities at Snap Design Academy. You know, I'm really thrilled to continue this chat with Jeff about my nonlinear journey into design and my desire to fuse my love for UX research and games. But for folks tuning in at home, if any of my work sparks curiosity, feel free to reach out to me at any of the links you see on my screen or your screen.
Great, thank you, Irene, really nicely done. Jeff, we'll turn it over to you for start the feedback.
Sure. I just want to say I think the work you're doing with Snapchat and Running Start is really amazing. That's really cool that you were able to get those opportunities while you were in the program, and I think that's just amazing to be a part of those and make that kind of a direct improvement and feeling that effect, which is incredible. With regards to, I'm a huge proponent of user research in game development. It's something that Luke and I, when we first met at Riot Games, spent a lot of time doing and finding a lot of value in. It's something that I drive a lot of my teams now, both internal and external playtesting pretty extensively. And I think doing that is immensely powerful. I will be frank. I've not met Nicole, and I hope Luke has sufficiently prepped her for this. But blockchain gaming grates me on a fundamental level, and I actually find it. And I'm going to really lean in and challenge here. I find blockchain gaming a really interesting contrast with your focus on LGBT and people of color communities, because I actually think it predicates on exploiting those individuals and their labor in a way that I find demonstrably exploitative and negative for both gaming as a space and for the future of that platform. And I really, we don't need to get into that conversation now, but I really question like the intersection of who you identify yourself at the beginning of being such a successfully proponent ally during your education to trying to leverage it now. And given the events that crypto has faced in the last month or so and sort of where crypto as a tech is going overall, I wonder of the value of that and how it intersects with that, which I know is really putting you on the spot, but I know no other way than to sort of as politely as I can have that conversation.
No, it's totally okay. Like, I knew getting into this project that there was going to be a lot of those types of questions, especially given like the type of work I was doing before. But I think I approach a lot of the projects that I do with curiosity and like a little bit of like fear, because that's what actually makes me want to like dive into it. Mm-hmm. And I think I had these prejudiced thoughts about like what the crypto gaming space was going to be, but I tried to approach that as objectively as possible to figure out what's wrong with it or what's working, and how do people who are playing these games truly feel. And so I think when it comes to the core answer of that is just like, it's really just exploring the person who's playing these games and understanding what attracts them to them and why are they playing them. So I think that's why I went into that direction, was really just to explore that space. I love games, and I know that all my friends too, who consider themselves as true players, they're like bad mouthing crypto games, and they're like, why would you even spend time there? And I'm like, well, you can't ignore a space that is growing. It might affect us, it might impact us in ways, but if you can catch that and trying to steer it in a better way, you know, I feel I can do something there with my UX research skills. So I think
sure. And then I to use the language of the feedback structure, then I wish you'd led with more of an explanation of your desire to explore and understand the space. Okay. As I feel like the way that you represented what you wanted to do in the space was more of how can I take and create a social platform in which you talk about combining with successful influencers who are obviously invested parties in the space already, having vetted influencers in the crypto space to be prevalent within this platform for the purposes of reviewing the games and finding avenues. Because that for me feels like you're engaging and amplifying the initial space, whereas the conversation we just had let me know that you're like, no, I'm trying to understand if it has value and where that value may lay and what that brings back to, which is like, okay, cool. That's an interesting UX space to write a white paper on of like, hey, here are the lessons from crypto that could be broadly applied to mobile monetization, that could broadly be applied to like user acquisition strategies, micro influencer strategies, any of those things. Those can be valuable white papers you can extract from this that you can put in your portfolio and talk about.
Gotcha.
Framing it as the way that you did for me, but I want to be very clear also, is like my issue with crypto gaming does not stem from the fact that I am both someone who makes games and plays games. It stems from the fact that I associate crypto gaming more closely with multi-level marketing schemes than I do with gaming. It is just a medium by which that process is being engaged in, and those things being multi-level marketing or exploitive financial structures unfairly and more commonly target people who you expressed yourself to be an ally to in the first degree, right? And so that's why that sort of pings a lot of stuff up. But with the explanation you provided, I wonder if it's actually a more compelling case to say, hey, I am someone who did X work that was valuable for these people. They also happen to be involved in something else that I care a lot about, which is the gaming space, through this new avenue. And I want to explore and understand how and what that would look like and what we can take away from that. That's really valuable and interesting.
Okay, that makes sense. I would say I'm trying to think of questions to ask you so that way I don't hit you up on LinkedIn with 20 afterwards.
As with everyone in Luke's class, you can hit me up on LinkedIn whenever you'd like. I'll get back to you at some timeline as I avoid Workstagram as much as I can, but it is useful. No, you're good. I think that those are very valid reasons on how to switch up my story. And okay, I think that's where I'm kind of left in that thought process right now. I similarly respect and appreciate the all-white decks with limited design. This is better. The older classes used to do very polished decks that would, you could tell they spent a lot of time on it, which is like great, but it's also not a thing that I ever care about. So I'm glad you know your audience.
In terms of like continuing to explore this space, I wanted to pivot the direction that I went in initially, but I want to be realistic of the amount of time I had. And one of the spaces was kind of reimagining what crypto gaming can be if it didn't have X, Y, and Z, what you said, like this multi-level marketing kind of scheme vibe that it gives off. And I do want to go in that space. And I would want to include the people, the communities that I had worked with in the past, because you're right, they do kind of there are predatory ways in which people are targeted. Even just recruiting people to talk to was really hard for me because I was like, I'm either getting spammed by bots or someone's trying to scheme me into something. So this was a really difficult project just to start off with.
Absolutely, but that should tell you in and of yourself there's something more interesting there underneath the surface of not just the gaming itself, but the community that exists around it, right? Like, there are not other games that have so many bots that target you relentlessly to play them or offer you, because the behavior pattern that you, again, as a UX designer can engage in is like crypto gaming websites have the same user acquisition strategies as betting sites that, are advertised relentlessly on TV and sporting events. And like engaging in an understanding of why is that a compelling message as a UX designer is a really interesting thing to explore, and how that's different from current games that are marketed. Even big games like Diablo Immortal comes out last week, right? Hugely aggressive mobile monetization strategies, but it still is processing all of its users through a traditional user acquisition funnel. Whereas if you go to something like any of the major crypto games, they're much more in line with all of the betting stuff we would see around the NBA playoffs right now, the NHL playoffs right now, the Super Bowl previously. So like, why does that delta exist, and what is engaging users employing it? Because I can go down this rabbit hole with you for a long time around like how crypto gaming came to exist and where it comes from, but like not the relevant conversation for right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I do think that like your articulation now in this conversation is a much more compelling representation of wanting to understand the space. And I think that that's what I wish you had done a better job of doing that in the previous one, because before it just felt like amplification, which made me nervous. And I literally texted Luke, "Oh shit." So
you're good. Okay, well, cool. I'll take it. I'll take any feedback.
Good.
And I think that's can everyone hear me? Because I had to. Okay, cool. So I think that's a really good transition into this, last part of the conversation, which is, we have two designers who created projects and presented them in the trajectory of their career and where they want to head. So Jeff, as sort of a way to wrap things up, is what advice would you give to Alice and Irene as they seek to, start to get into this space? Anything that you would recommend?
Sure. I think I'll start with Alice and I'll go to Irene, and then I also would rather I'll end with a question for them to come back to me. But I think with Alice, we sort of roughly covered this. And if finances are not a major driver for you right now, then like keep making that game. The most valuable thing you can do in your career at this point is ship a game on your own. That will be infinitely valuable to you. The lessons learned, the way that story in an interview will be the entire interview at most gaming studios, where you'll be able to tell such a compelling representation of what you learned, what you did, how you did it, and the follow through on that is the thing that'll matter for a lot of people. And if finances become a problem, then like you'll jump to that stage sooner rather than later. With Irene, the line I caught in your presentation that I think is the compelling part for you, or the thing you're most interested in, is UX research, and that like you enjoy and want to do UX research in gaming. And if that's the case, I think you're in a fine space. You're exploring a fine space to do that. But I actually would say the most interesting and compelling way to get started in that is to find and align with UX research opportunities that are open. And the place that Luke and I have actually encountered this with a number of previous students. And so I'm happy to have this conversation with you here. Find a UX research coordinator job and take it. One of the things that we've seen previous students do when those opportunities are put in front of them is they look at those jobs and they pass on them because they want to be a UX researcher or they want to be a research manager. And those are jobs you're often competing where you need to have credentials sort of at or near the PhD level. And it's like, no, get in, do the grunt work of doing that now. Like based on the first slide you had of the hell that is medtech UI and your previous life in that world, like you understand the labor that's needed to actually manage and coordinate people in that environment. Lean into that skill set you have to find yourself in those opportunities, taking those roles, and you'll quickly accelerate out of them. But the best thing to do in terms of user research is to get in the door and doing it, because good user researchers are very hard to find. And when you do, like orgs will hold on to them and pay them a lot to get them as high in the org as they can as quickly as possible. And the thing that we've actually had a lot of previous students struggle with is they pass on those opportunities trying to sort of find these like golden scenarios. And in some cases, it'll take years. In a lot of cases, it'll take years for them to sort of work their way back down to then going through a coordinator door or an associate door. And I would say, given your background in the medtech space, like I think you can actually leverage that in combination with the degree to get into that door and do that. The question I have for both of you is like, are those fair assessments of what you actually want to try to do as your first jobs in gaming and in that space? Or do you have a different objective you'd like to sort of pursue?
I had like another job lined up that can probably fund my game, in all honesty. And I'm pretty much just making my game on the side and hopefully make some side income and have some fun. Yep.
I love that attitude. I think it's a great attitude to have. And I want to be clear, like reassess that, right? Every 6 months to a year, be like, is this work just funding this project? Do you enjoy it enough? Is it draining emotionally and all that? And if it is, then like, be like, can I, and like, come talk to me or go talk to the person that we've introduced you to and be like, have a sort of impromptu interview conversation of sorts and be like, do you think I have the credibility to get in as a level 2 designer at a company that like can get through that threshold and make that pivot? But yeah, I think it's a very healthy attitude to have. I really respect that, Alice. Irene, is that a fair take on what you want, or should we be having a different conversation?
No, I know for sure, like this was a really hard decision to make, especially the last semester of like being in school, where I was like, oh, I'm going to make this really hard pivot to game space because I've been working in these other spaces and I really want to explore that. And that's really where I am. And that's why I want to take on like kind of user testing, like a role with an indie game developer, and also looking for associate, like UX research associate positions. I know
indie game will be very hard to find.
Yeah.
Indie game user research is very rare because it's an expense that most indie game studios won't spend. They'll self-run it. You want to like, you're I assume in Southern California and SoCal, like in yeah, like you want to look at Activision, Riot, Respawn, Blizzard, like the big dogs all in that sort of area, all have extensive user research programs that are very well run by, I know many of the leaders of those departments are incredibly competent with great track records of developing people, and finding good people willing to do the legwork at the beginning is what you want to look for. In the indie game space, it's much rarer that you're going to find places well funded enough that they can support that early.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we are right about at time. So before we end today, I want to thank three specific groups of people, and we're going to start with Jeff. Jeff, thank you for coming. You've been a friend of the program. We really appreciate your feedback, and it was really great to have this space. So thank you. Big round of applause for you. Second group, Alice, Irene, you did it. You made it through the as a COVID class. You made it. I know you didn't sign up for this, but finishing the program is a real testament to you. So thank you for that. And then the last group I want to thank are the people who are out there watching. There's this idea that designers do it alone. That's rubbish. There's a team that always delivers great products, and oftentimes that team is our families, partners, and friends who have supported us. So for those of you who are out there supported our students along their IxD journey, thank you. You are part of their success. So that is it for today. Take care of yourself and for each other, and we will see people who are out there on Wednesday for our next group of students who will be there. So thanks again, everyone. Take care.